What is going on? How's everybody doing today? Hope everybody's having a good day so far. Hope everybody's had a good week this week. And hope everybody's had a good start to the new year. But outside of that, we're here to talk about some Florida Gators transfer portal talk because I'm loving what Jon Sumrall and staff has been doing in the transfer portal. I think they've been doing some amazing work revamping this roster and really transforming it from that Billy Napier roster to the new era of the Florida Gators, I would say. So, we're going to get into some guys that Jon Sumrall have Jon Sumrall and the whole staff have worked to retain that I think are massive, and some other guys that they've also brought in out of the transfer portal. But before we do get into that, I do want to say I appreciate all the Florida fans. You guys have shown me a tremendous amount of support so far on these videos. I know I uploaded a few weeks back, and I got great feedback for them. I greatly appreciate that. So if you are a Florida fan and you're not yet subscribed, I would greatly appreciate it if you at least considered it because it helps the channel a lot, and we're going to be doing a lot of Florida content. But outside of that, going to get straight into the transfer portal stuff. So if you know anything about this channel, we're not going to go too in depth, but kind of give my thoughts and opinions. And yeah, so let's get into it. So the first one, I thought it was an amazing job by Jon Sumrall to bring back Jaden Ball. So Jaden Ball had a lot of interest around the entire country. And you looked at him as your next superstar running back. You looked at him as potentially one of the top running backs in the entire country going into 2026 season. And I don't disagree with that whatsoever. I think Jaden Ball is an absolute monster, and I think you've not yet to see the best of him. I think that you're going to see something great. You're going to see something great with him this year. And I think a big thing that Florida has done in the transfer portal will also help Jaden Ball, and I'll kind of explain that in just a little bit. But man, I think this is a great move. You know, Texas was willing to offer him a lot of money to go over there. Some other programs, Ohio State was in on him, Georgia was in on him, and you worked, you got him back when it seemed unlikely. And Jaden Ball is still a Florida Gator. He did re-sign with Florida, and I think this is a massive move by the staff to keep him in. And another guy that they retain is Jaden Woods. This got announced like yesterday. This is another guy. He's a freshman, only 19 years old, crazy high upside. Another guy with him. He had lots of interest from other schools in the transfer portal. A lot of guys were hosting, or a lot of programs were hosting him on visits or trying to. And you worked and you got him back. I think this is a massive, massive get. I think you're going to see some more productivity out of him this year. And I mean, obviously, he was a very high recruit. So this is a guy that you love to keep around. One of the guys that you really wanted to retain off of that Billy Napier roster. So great job by Jon Sumrall and the staff over at Florida to bring back Jaden Woods. I think this is massive for him. Now, you went out and you got your quarterback. Now, there are some questions whether he will be whether he's for sure going to be the starter next year, because you did bring back Tramel Jones. So I do wonder if Aaron Philo and Tramel Jones are going to have a quarterback battle in camp. I'm pretty sure they will, or if Florida even brings in another transfer quarterback. Because Aaron Philo, you bring him in when, I guess Jon Sumrall, he's in obviously first year at Florida, first year in the SEC, and you brought in a really good offensive coordinator in Buster Faulkner, who really helped revamp that Georgia Tech program to places that I think a lot of Georgia Tech fans weren't really expecting to be at. And the first quarterback that you bring in is Aaron Philo, and I would think you would want to go out and make a big splash. That was my original thought, was Florida's going to make a pretty big splash at the quarterback position in the transfer portal. But what we saw of Aaron Philo last year, it looked pretty good. I think there is upside there. Actually, I know there's upside there. And I think this is one of those moves where you really just have to trust Buster Faulkner and what he sees, because he saw something in Haynes King a lot of us didn't see. Like when Haynes King was leaving Texas A&M, I was not big on Haynes King. They brought him into Georgia Tech and made him a borderline Heisman contender at times. So if Aaron Philo was committed to play with Buster Faulkner, and Buster Faulkner obviously knew something there. He sees something in Philo that maybe the outside fan perspective doesn't really see. Because, I mean, we're not there to see all the practices. We're not there to see all the reps he gets outside of the TV time that Florida gets. So Aaron Philo might be something special. And based off of what we saw, like I said, the one game that he played in last year, he looked pretty good. I think there is upside there, and I I wouldn't be surprised if he's quarterback one next year. So I think it's a pretty good pickup. And you also didn't have to go and spend an absurd amount of money to really bring in one of those big splash quarterbacks when you could be spending it on other assets on the roster. So the next one is DJ Coleman. DJ Coleman, he's the number 9 safety in the entire transfer portal. He's another high upside guy out of Baylor. I think he's going to fit very well into this Florida defense right at that safety spot. He's a guy from Texas. So, I think it's just a very solid get for the Florida Gators in the transfer portal there. So, the next one is Lakota Dupree. This is a guy who Florida really needed to upgrade at tight end. Now, I don't expect this to be the only tight end they bring in. I do think they're going to bring in another tight end or two. But when you look at blocking, this kid can block. This kid is a very good blocker at the tight end position. So you got a good blocking tight end, and he's for sure an upgrade over what you had. I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about. He's an upgrade over what you had in the pass catching game. He's an upgrade over what you had in the run blocking game. Now, Lakota Dupree, I think that his pass catching and his receiving ability is very underrated. And coming from a school like James Madison, I think that there is upside there that you hadn't seen yet. And will he transition to the SEC? I think he could. I think he very well could. Because he's a big body tight end, 6'4", 253. Probably going to put on a little bit more size as well. So I think that you got a blocking tight end at least, and a guy who's capable of being a receiving tight end. But like I said, I don't think this is the only guy that you're going to bring in at the tight end position. So the next one is Harrison Moore. So this is another one that you kind of have to trust Buster Faulkner with. A lot of these Georgia Tech guys, you kind of have to trust Buster Faulkner. Now, in 73 block opportunities, he only allowed 1 pressure. So I think that's saying something about what you want on your offensive line. He still has 2 years of eligibility. He's played all over the interior O-line, so he's a super versatile player. And like I said, just a guy that you kind of have to trust with Buster Faulkner, because Buster Faulkner sees something. And also your new offensive line coach, Phil Troutman, being a guy that watched a lot of Penn State football these past 10 years, trust me, Phil Troutman he's going to develop these guys at a very high level like he did at Penn State. If you look at Penn State's offensive line year in and year out, they were all very good. He developed players at a high level, and I expect Harrison Moore to take even bigger jumps to his game with Phil Troutman and obviously Buster Faulkner as well. So another Georgia Tech guy who, again, I think you have to trust Buster Faulkner here. This is Bailey Stockton. So Bailey Stockton comes in. He feels like a slot receiver. Maybe could play a little bit on the outside. More of a speedy guy. He played 26 games, 38 catches, 439 yards. So you haven't really seen too much productivity out of him, but you've seen the flashes. You've seen the glimpses. I think this is another guy who, like I said, Buster Faulkner sees something, so he's willing to bring him in and give him a shot. Will he ever see a significant amount of playing time at Florida? I don't know. Especially this year or next year. I don't know. But I do think that he is a guy that could be pretty versatile, and I think there's some upside there. I'm not saying his upside's crazy high, but there's something there. He's another guy who I'm pretty sure he followed Aaron Philo in, because as soon as Aaron Philo did announce his commitment or his original visit to Florida, Bailey Stockton also announced his visit to Florida. So I do think that he was kind of following his former offensive coordinator and quarterback. So we'll see what happens with Bailey Stockton. But, if there's upside there, I never think it's a bad swing to take. So the next one is DK Kalu. So DK Kalu, he's another guy. He's not had much experience on the field, but you're kind of banking on a lot of upside here as well. He's a big guy to fit right into the interior D-line, which you see Jon Sumrall doing a lot of. He's bringing in a lot of these bigger interior defensive linemen. If you see 6'4", 309, another guy, like I said, if you're just taking swings on guys with upside, I don't think it's that bad. If you see flashes of these guys and you think that you can come in and or bring them in and develop them to a higher level than what you've seen, go for it. Go for it because we see it a lot in college football and it works sometimes. It's not going to work every time, but it does work sometimes. So the next one, Florida did go out and get another running back to pair with Jaden Baugh, who they brought back. That running back is Evan Pryor. So Evan Pryor was pretty solid last year for Cincinnati in kind of a pass-heavy offense, I would say. 76 rushes, 522 yards, 3 touchdowns. But what really stands out to me is the capability of him being involved in the passing game. Last year, he had 10 catches for 107 yards and a touchdown. He's a former four-star. He did play at Ohio State for a few years before he transferred to Cincinnati. So, like I said, when a team like Ohio State see something in him, there's something there because Ohio State's pretty good at bringing in and developing running backs. So when they bring in a guy like Evan Pryor, I think they see something there. I think there's something there. Now, I expect him to be pretty heavily involved in the receiving game for Florida next year. You know, Aaron Philo, he is a little bit of a less experienced quarterback. Like I said, he's only played like one full game in his college career. So if you have to check down some stuff to Evan Pryor, I think you'll see that a lot next year when Evan Pryor's on the field. I think that he'll be pretty involved in the receiving game next year for Florida. So I think it's a good pickup. And also you'll have that 1-2 punch with him and Jaden Baugh. I like it. I think there's still upside with Evan Pryor too. I think there's upside with a lot of these guys. That's what I see in what Jon Sumrall has been doing in the transfer portal. A lot of high upside guys, which is kind of what you get out of the transfer portal when you're not going for the big splash names. So the next one is TJ Shanahan. TJ Shanahan Jr. at that. So this is a guy, he's following Phil Troutman from Penn State. I hate to say it again, but another high upside interior guy. I love this move for Florida. You know, Phil Troutman, like I said, has developed great offensive linemen over at Florida or over at Penn State. So you're probably going to see the same thing here. Now, what I was talking about with Phil Troutman and Jaden Baugh and Evan Pryor was you saw what really stood out at Penn State these last few years was the run game. The offensive line knew how to block for the run game. You had a very good run blocking offensive line, and I think that's what you're going to see here with Florida. When you factor in, you brought back Jaden Baugh, who, like I said, has one of the highest potentials out of any running back in the country, and he could be one of the top running backs in the country next year. And then you bring in a less experienced quarterback who you may have to let him rely on the run game some. You know, any college offense, you need to have a run game and a pass game. But I think that bringing in Phil Troutman and bringing in some of these guys that are familiar with Phil Troutman, like Egan Boyer as well from Penn State, I think that it's a good move for Florida because, like I said, you're gonna have a good O-line, and they're really beefing up the O-line in the transfer portal. So I love these moves, both of these moves for Florida, because these guys have already worked with Phil Troutman already. So he's familiar with them. He sees something to bring them in. They're familiar with him. They like playing for him, so they go and play with him. And also, Egan Boyer is a massive dude. 6'8", 302 on your offensive line at tackle. I think you will take that all day. That's all I'm saying. So the next one is Emmanuel Oyabedo. Oyabed. I'm not even gonna. I'm sorry. I'm not even gonna try it. But anyways, I've watched him a lot. Don't know how to say his last name, but I've watched some tape on him. He's a huge edge rusher. If you look at him, he's 6'7", 295. Probably going to be even heavier once he gets on campus. Crazy motor. He's a guy who I think will translate to the SEC ball very well, coming from the group of five. Now, like I said, he's going to be coming off the edge. Imagine a guy like this coming off the edge at 6'7", 295. Has some speed, has a motor. I love the upside here. I absolutely love the upside here, and I think this is a guy that you really want to watch for coming from Jacksonville State in the next season. So definitely be looking out for him. I'll learn how to say his name soon. But they also went out and got Micah Mays Jr. He's from Florida. So a lot of times these guys, when they're in the transfer portal, you see them go back home some. So that's kind of what you saw here with Micah Mays, is he just came back to Florida. Now, he's a guy from Wake Forest. He had 18 catches there for 302 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think you'll get to see him involved a little bit, and maybe you will get to see him. Maybe you'll see his game elevated a little bit, being that he will probably have better quarterback play than what he had over at Wake Forest. I don't think Robbie Ashford was amazing at Wake Forest, so it's kind of hard to get all the receivers involved. But if he does get some playing time at Florida, I think that, or if he does get the amount of playing time at Florida that he did at Wake Forest, I do expect some. You'll see his game and his numbers jump up a little bit. I think it's a good move. Just he may be a depth piece, but I think it's a good move either way. Now the next one, this is one of my favorites, and I think it's one of the more underrated pickups in the entire cycle, and that is Elijah Owens. So Elijah Owens, he's a JUCO safety. He's got to be one of the top JUCO safeties. I'm not sure how the rankings are. I haven't seen the JUCO rankings, but if you look at him, if you watch him, you see major upside here. And I hate to say it again, but yes, there's major upside here. His true freshman year had 65 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. He had a pick, 3 pass breakups, and that was only in 11 games as a true freshman. You still have plenty of years of control. Like I said, I personally love this pickup. I think I don't know if he'll be involved right away. Majorly. I think that you'll see him on the field. You'll definitely see him on the field. But I think this is a guy that you kind of sit back and wait to develop, because I believe he could be a true difference maker within these next few years. And he could be one of those guys that comes from the JUCO rankings, and you really hear about him being one of the top safeties in the country. I think he is that. I think he has that potential, and I'm not just saying that to say it. I really do. If you look at his numbers stand out massively for his safety. Like I said, he was only a true freshman. You got a guy right here. You may have a hidden gem right here, and I love this pickup for Florida, especially when you're getting him for pretty cheap as well. Now another one that you brought in is Cam Dooley. This is another one. We'll see if he gets major playing time. Now, Florida did make a little push for him, so I expect him to be involved somewhat. He's a guy who, if he does win a job, he could slide right into that safety spot for Florida next year. So I think it's a good pickup. I think it's a solid pickup just for maybe a depth piece, maybe a guy that you could actually see rotating in and out at safety. So, yeah, that'll do it for this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you did drop a subscribe or consider subscribing. Like I said, Florida fans, you guys have shown me a tremendous amount of support, so we're going to have a lot of Florida content coming. I'm absolutely loving what Jon Sumrall has done as time at Florida so far. So, yeah, a lot more coming as we hear more about Florida in the transfer portal. So, that'll do it for this one. Let me know in the comments what you think about all these pickups. Let me know if there's any other players out there that you were hoping Jon Sumrall goes out and lands. So, yeah. That'll do it for this one. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.